So the FBI claims to have prevented a massive pro-Palestine terror plot that was being planned for New Year's. Here's the tweet from Pam Bondi. After an intense investigation, the Department of Justice, working with our FBI, prevented what would have been a massive and horrific terror plot in the Central District of California, Orange County, and Los Angeles. The Turtle Island Liberation Front, a far-left, pro-Palestine, anti-government, and anti-capitalist group, was preparing to conduct a series of bombings against multiple targets in California beginning on New Year's Eve. The group also planned to target ICE agents and vehicles. This was an incredible effort by our U.S. attorneys' offices and the FBI to ensure Americans can live in peace. We will continue to pursue these terror groups and bring them to justice. Apparently, this plot involved placing explosive devices in backpacks that would have been dropped at 5 different locations. But the FBI foiled their plan after using a surveillance plane to catch the 4 people out in the desert where they were found with precursor chemicals. The FBI claims that they were going to build bombs and test them out all, out in the desert, apparently. And this all, to me, seems a little bit too convenient. A pro-Palestine terror plot foiled one day after the terror attack in Australia, all of it being blamed on pro-Palestine, anti-Israel ideology. I don't know, it just seems pretty convenient to me. Karlyn Borisenko is a psychologist turned investigative journalist who has been infiltrating far-left groups for years. She's the author of Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life, and Debunking the Communist Manifesto, an unapologetic takedown of Marxist nonsense. She says that the FBI and the DOJ are messing this up by wrongly classifying the group as pro-Palestine. Karlyn, welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me. I think this is a really important issue for people to talk about and to understand why the far left does what it does, because it's not what the DOJ is saying.
Okay, so they're showing we've been seeing all of these images of this group. I think we have some of these. You've actually on your is it a Substack that you have or your website? Which one is it?
Yeah, it's a Substack. So karlyn.substack.com.
Okay, so and we have that link down below. And on your Substack, you actually archived every single post that this group, Turtle Liberation Front, what a funny name for a terror group, but doesn't sound like doesn't sound very terrifying. But you actually archived every single one of their posts, and a lot of these look like, they're being painted as this pro-Palestine, like this is what happens when you globalize the Intifada. This is what we've been saying, right? Like this is the pro-Palestine problem. This is the globalize the Intifada problem. This is, we've got to stop these people that are protesting for Palestine. They're just terrorists. They're all Hamas. This is what we're saying. And you've archived all the posts. When I look at the posts, I see a lot of pro-Palestine stuff, but you're saying that's not what this is.
Well, it's not as though this group is not pro-Palestine. Of course, they're pro-Palestine. Every single far-left group is pro-Palestine, but calling them a pro-Palestine activist group actually completely misses the point of what the group is. It's kind of like calling J.D. Vance an anti-abortion activist. Okay, so J.D. Vance doesn't like abortion. He would never support abortion, but calling J.D. Vance an anti-abortion activist as a summation of who he is and what he does is grossly misleading. He's the vice president of the United States. And in the case of the Turtle Island Liberation Front, actually, the name is very specific because the name is a reference to what they refer to as the decolonized land in America. It's a reference to North America before it was colonized by the Europeans, which they believe brought in oppression and capitalism and all that. The goal of this group, they have obvious sympathies with Palestine, but the actual goal of this group is to overthrow the United States government. And so my big point in all of this, and you're right, I went through all of their posts on their Instagram. I archived them just in case their Instagram goes away. So I've seen all of their public posts. My point is, why is the government, the FBI, the DOJ, the people who are supposed to be in charge of running America, why are they putting the pro-Palestine message first when it's just a grossly misleading characterization of what this group is? They are an Antifa group that wants to overthrow the federal government. They call for this multiple times on their Instagram. They call for death to America. They call for a revolution. And so I have to wonder, and I personally find it to be offensive that the Trump administration put the pro-Palestine messaging first and completely obfuscated what this group is actually spending most of their time talking about, which is literally encouraging revolutionary action among the far left in America. And I think it's an incredibly dangerous precedent to set, particularly when you think about the fact that just months ago, Antifa was declared a domestic terrorist organization. This group is not being charged as Antifa. They're not being charged as domestic terrorists. I've never seen a more obvious case of an Antifa group in the 5 years I've been doing this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think this group is real? How long ago did they start posting, even on Instagram or anywhere?
It wasn't very long ago, but that actually doesn't mean anything when it comes to the far left. So how I kind of look at this group is I think this group is a relatively newer collective group that has sprung up in Los Angeles, so that they seem to have ties to other places around the country as well. But what is very clear to me is it is run by experienced far left activists. So even though this particular group might be new, even though their social media may not have a lot of history, I absolutely believe that the people behind this are experienced on the far left and very immersed in their subculture.
Do you think that it's possible that this group is it's kind of another one of those FBI? I mean, I'm suspicious of this. I just think, oh, really? You guys were surveilling this tiny group. I mean, it wasn't very big. They only arrested 4 people out in the desert. This isn't like a massive group of people that were getting together, and there were actually 4 people cannot overthrow the government. 4 people cannot do very much damage. I mean, yes, they can do a lot of damage, but not enough to overthrow the government, not enough for anything, anything super massive. And they apparently had surveilled them. They used a surveillance plane. Like, how would they even know who these people were, or to even get to the point of surveilling that? It just seems a little suspicious to me. Like, maybe they had insiders. Maybe this is another one of those FBI situations where they like, one of them is an informant that really was kind of plotting and planning the whole thing. And it was, give them the ideas, give them the ability, the materials, give them all of, everything they need, and then be able to say, ha, we got you. Now we got a pro-Palestine terrorist group. We've caught them. I mean, do you think that it's possible that this group is not a real group? Anytime the FBI does these types of things, they're of course real people. Maybe they do have this ideology, but the FBI capitalizes on that, maybe capitalizes on the fact that they're mentally ill, pushes them in this direction just so that they can say, ha ha, gotcha. And now look, we've done our job, and now we're going to have to squash some of your rights, which is speech in this case, and protesting.
I completely understand your perspective on this. And honestly, you bring up some really good questions in terms of, like, why was the FBI embedded with this particular group? There are thousands of Antifa cells all over the country, and there are many of which that are bigger and more established than this, that the FBI may get a lot more fruitful information out of. So I completely agree with your point there. I guess my perspective on the situation is, if the FBI wanted to actually embed themselves in a pro-Palestine group, there are many, many, many pro-Palestine groups out there that their only issue is Palestine, and they probably would have been much more easy to infiltrate than a small little cell in Los Angeles that had a couple people that were really militant and would be open to these ideas. So I would wonder why they would choose this particular group and then frame it in a way that doesn't make any sense when you look at the actual propaganda. I also have to say, again, like, I've read through all their propaganda. I read far left literature and propaganda for a living. It's very easy for me to tell who knows the language and who doesn't, who knows the ideas and who doesn't. This group had people in it that absolutely knew the ideas. And so maybe there was an FBI informant involved that were encouraging them to do something like this. But to be honest, we've seen Antifa get more and more violent and more brazen all year long. I think it's only going to continue. The anti-ICE activism is only going to get more violent and aggressive because they believe they're winning. And technically, I would actually agree with them on that. And so I think maybe there is something to the idea that there was an FBI person or someone that, kind of got them down this road of doing something violent where they could, capture them at exactly the right time and have their gotcha moment. I wouldn't dismiss it, but I would say these are real far left activists, and the group is real. Mm-hmm. And the threat that they represent is real. I think what I find offensive, again, is the total mischaracterization of it to the public to, quite frankly, put Israel ahead of the interests of America again, right? Yeah. Well, and like you said, the administration had already come out and said, "Oh, Antifa is a terrorist organization." When it's not even. I mean, you'd brought up it's not even an organization. It's just it's an ideology. I'd say more than anything, right? Like, people that shared ideology.
They're not really organized, but it's definitely a growing ideology. Why not characterize this group as that? We have some of their posts here. Let's show this one. There's no pride in being American. Defect from America. Become citizens of Turtle Island. Have loyalty to the tribes of this land. Call for land back. F America. So that obviously doesn't sound very pro-Palestine. I mean, that's serious. That's like what you're bringing up. This is a down with the government. Or this one, death to America, death to colonizers, death to capitalism, death to imperialism. It's not violent support of these it's not violent support of these structures is. And let's see this one. The idea of displacing a population of civilians in order to create an ethno-state is the ideology of colonizers. When we call for the death of America and reestablishment of tribal leadership over Turtle Island, it is a call for revolutionary change in government. So, and then they have these other ones like, if you truly want change, there's only one solution, revolution. Death to America is another one. They do this one a lot, apparently. So America has always been the brutal evil monster that some of you don't want to face. And you have all of these plus more on your Substack. I mean, you've like shown all of their posts, and this isn't like a pro-Palestine group. I mean, what you're showing here, this is definitely like down with America. We hate the government, down with capitalism, down with the patriarchy, right? Like these things that we've been hearing, down with the colonizers.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that people see the full context of this because, again, there are, of course, pro-Palestinian sympathies because every far-left group is pro-Palestine. But what people need to understand is the issue that this far-left group has with Israel, and this is true of every far-left group, not just this one. The issue they have with Israel is exactly the same issue that they have with America. They hate them both for exactly the same reason. It has nothing to do with Israel being Jewish, has nothing to do with Palestinians being Muslim, which is the narrative, of course, that's being put forth on the conservative right, is that they want to support Muslims and Islam and all this stuff. Has nothing to do with Jewish or Islam. It has to do with Israel being the settler colonists who stole the land from the indigenous Palestinians and privatized it under the oppressive force of capitalism. Decolonization is the effort that the Palestinians are making to overthrow their capitalist oppressors. I'm explaining what the left believes. I'm not saying what I believe. Their issue with America is exactly the same thing. The European colonists came to America, stole the land from the indigenous people, the Native Americans, and privatized it under capitalism. And when they're calling for revolution against the government or a return to Turtle Island, telling people to consider themselves to be citizens of Turtle Island, that is saying America before the European colonists came and oppressed everyone by stealing the land. So that is the correlation between the two. And again, this is something that if you don't understand this perspective on the left, then it's really difficult to understand why the left does what it does.
What do they envision? What is their, okay, so what do they want? They want us to all leave?
No, they want to get rid of the government, the Constitution, the courts, the Electoral College, the Senate, the executive. They want to get rid of all banks, all money. They want to get rid of all prisons and all police. They want to build a commune society. This is a communist ideology. It is a far left communist ideology that views America down to its very foundations as a mechanism of capitalism. And so the only way to overthrow capitalism, and that's the way they believe that capitalism is the ultimate oppressor, being private property ownership, which is why they're so focused on the land. And so the only way they see to overthrow capitalism is literally to get rid of the Constitution and the United States government, because they believe that these were structures built upon capitalism from the very beginning. So that's what they want. I mean, their ideology is crazy. You can even go into, they want free healthcare for everyone, including all the trans surgeries and hormones that you could possibly want. They want all public schooling compulsory for kids, no private schooling, no homeschooling, no opting out. Again, no money, no private property ownership, no house ownership. So yeah, their list of demands goes on, but it always comes back to this focal point of abolishing private property ownership.
So they want to get rid of the government, but then they want a lot of government.
They don't see it that way. I understand why you see it that way. They view it as more direct democracy by the people, because the only part of the government that they want to keep is like a House of Representatives style thing, but it would be much larger in their vision than what it currently is. So they believe this is actually the only true form of democracy that exists, is a socialist democracy where everyone gets to participate.
Or everybody's forced into one way of being. So then the people
Well,
that
that's how
don't
it
want to live
turns
like
out.
that, right? Well, I mean, and it becomes extremely oppressive and lacking the freedoms, right? Because not everybody wants to live the exact same way. But if you force everybody to live the exact same way with the exact same conditions or the exact same education or the exact same, I mean, to have zero option, zero choice in that is highly oppressive. And they think that that's somehow going to be liberating.
Yeah, well, they believe it's the ultimate liberation from the ultimate oppression that is capitalism. And again, I want to be very clear. I don't believe in any of this stuff. I
Right.
analyze the far left. I understand. And so I just want to make sure people are not confused. I'm not advocating for this. But what I will say, it is very important to understand that the far left does genuinely believe that all of this will lead to a better, more fair world for everyone. And they're literally willing to fight for their ideas. They're willing to die for their ideas. They're willing to go to jail for their ideas. I oftentimes refer to like the far left as a cult, because they don't talk to anyone else outside of the far left. They have no idea that opinions like yours or other people's exist on the internet. They believe that real communism has never been tried. And so you can tell them a million times, communism has killed over 100 million people. You're all like, your ideas are going to make us all starve to death. This is not a good idea. And they're going to say, well, real communism has never been tried for reason X, Y, B, and Z. And so they believe they're going to do it right this time. And that is their worldview. And I think what makes them so dangerous is not only that they are so completely unhinged from reality in terms of what is actually going to work in a human society, but it is that they don't listen to ideas outside of their ecosystem. So they really think that everyone agrees with them. And if you don't agree with them, then you are an evil fascist that needs to be silenced.
How dangerous do you really think? I mean, do you think that this ideology is growing, and with what age groups?
Oh, I think this ideology is incredibly dangerous. I think that, listen, we've had an entire generation of kids that are now graduating from high school and college go through a public school system in which they've been indoctrinated into this ideology since they were 5 years old. So we're talking about an entire generation of kids that literally doesn't know any different. And once they get to college, it's like game on from there. They're graduating being far left activists. I sit in on college classes and college lectures all the time at some of the most prestigious schools in the country, and they are lecturing about communism and Marxism consistently, the very same ideas that I've articulated in this talk, the very same ideas that we saw the Turtle Island Liberation Front articulate, those are being taught in colleges right now. And so I think that people are really unaware that this is a growing problem. Now, I think a bigger problem than that, though, is the fact that the Trump administration and the federal government doesn't take it seriously at all. And the Trump administration and the federal government are basically using it as a political ploy to try to rile up their base. But when it comes down to actively acting on what Antifa is doing and what they're planning on doing, because their anti-ICE activism is only going to get more pronounced in 2026. I'm going through their plans for 2026 right now. I'm going to be talking about it on my channel today. And they're going to get more aggressive. And so we have a big problem where we have a group of militant activists that are highly committed to doing everything they can to overthrow the government. And we have a government that's using it as a political kind of game or ploy to rile up their base, but then they don't actually do anything to stop it. And not only that, but they lie to the public, or I should maybe say lie, but grossly misinform the public about what we're dealing with so that their own supporters don't even know what the far left is doing. And so I'm really actually deeply concerned about the type of environment that we're walking into in 2026 and even leading up to 2028 when, the far left wants to do a mass general strike in 2028 to shut down the economy. They've already been planning this openly for over a year, and no one's talking about that either. So it's going to be a rough couple of years, I think.
Yeah, and for the government to take this group and this opportunity for them to actually highlight Antifa, which is something that they were doing earlier, and to instead twist it into Israel and anti-Semitism, because that's exactly what they're going to do with this. Is we got to do something about anti-Semitism. Look at how dangerous it is. We have to stop these pro-Palestine protesters. We can't have these protesters, right? I mean, that's obviously what they're setting us up for, rather than, hey, we need to pay attention to this growing ideology. But how do you even combat this? I mean, again, I have a hard time believing these 4 people were going to actually do anything worth anything. And I also question, at what point are you really foiling a plan? And is it legitimate? At what point is it legitimately even a plan? I mean, people talk all the time about random things they want to do. If the FBI suddenly swoops in and they say, well, we heard you were talking about something, doing something, even though you haven't yet, or you haven't even taken, it's like, at what point are you foiling a plan or just foiling somebody's fantasy, right? And it's not even really going to be a plan. It's just some stupid fantasy. What can the government even do you think, in regards to this? I mean, if it's a ideology that they're believing, I don't know if cracking down like this is even, I mean, obviously you have to stop terror plots if they're real. If there really is a bombing plot, then of course you have to stop it. But what else can you do?
I think you bring up some very good points about, them enforcing it when people maybe aren't going to follow through on it. I think that's very worthy of consideration. What I would say is the biggest mistake the Trump administration made from the very beginning is they didn't actually define what it means to be an Antifa. There is no definition in that executive order that would hold up in a court of law. The ACLU would be there fighting it in about half a second to say this person is a member of Antifa and this person isn't. Because the fact of the matter is there are a lot of revolutionary people on the far left that are not in Antifa. Antifa is a very specific group with a very specific set of direct action tactics around black bloc, around security culture, around direct actions that they initiate. And they publish all this stuff online. So people can go online and say, these are the tactics that Antifa uses. If you know where to look, you can find the information. And I think that the big mistake that the Trump administration made was not putting definitions around these are the types of behavior that designate someone as being a member of Antifa. They're dressing in black bloc. They're using these security culture tactics. They're engaging in these types of direct actions with umbrellas and bicycles and fireworks. You can almost just go through their direct action manual, and literally Antifa does have a direct action manual where they dictate all this and say if a person is doing these things, then they are a member of Antifa. And even more than that, the Trump administration not charging this group as Antifa is absolutely mind-boggling to me. It's like they forgot that they just issued the executive order in the first place, because this group is actually on the record. I have a tweet from their account saying we are Antifa, we are anti-American, we are Antifa in no uncertain terms. So it's not even as though this group would have to fit into some definition. They have self-professed that they are Antifa, and the Trump administration still didn't charge them under that. What can be done about this? Kim, I think the first thing that needs to happen is people need to start hinging into reality with what we're dealing with. And right now, I see very few people on the right, and definitely not many people, if any, in the Trump administration that actually know what they're talking about when it comes to the far left. And I say that I've gone undercover more with Antifa just this year than I think almost anyone else ever has, period. I've gone undercover with Antifa half a dozen times this year alone, and I've been going undercover with them for 3 years. I know this group, and what I see coming out of the Trump administration and out of right-wing influencers, there's no relation to what is going on the ground at all.
Are they all violent?
They all can be violent. They talk about violence. They talk about the necessity of violence. There was just a manifesto that came out a couple weeks ago called Be Queer, Do Terrorism, which absolutely advocates for violence. I'm starting to see more manifestos and writings on anarchist websites that say nonviolent protest isn't going to get us anywhere. I was just at an event actually a week and a half ago in San Francisco at an anarchist book fair where I literally picked up flyers and zines where they're talking about how nonviolence isn't going to achieve what they want, and so they have to become more comfortable with the idea of it. I have communists on video talking about how they're not opposed to terrorism, they're just opposed when people do it individually. If you're doing terrorism as part of a group activity within Antifa, that's totally fine because violence is necessary, but when you have a lone wolf or something like that, they're opposed to individual terrorism, not terrorism as part of the collective. So can they be violent? Yes. How many people do I think would rise to that occasion? Perhaps not many, but I think enough within the far left that I am worried about what we're going to see over the next couple of years.
So you're a psychologist. What is it that drives somebody to become, I think when we look at a lot of different groups that are violent in nature or terrorist groups, or even young men that join ISIS, right? The guys that grew up in Europe, and then they ended up going and being recruited and joining ISIS. And there's usually there's usually a common denominator there of what has, this person is lacking essentially a lot of things that would give them self-value outside of joining these radical groups. But they join these radical groups and it's almost like because they have nothing else to do, or they're feeling hopeless in a lot of other aspects of their life and they feel like this is the last hope. And so I'm going to go and join this radical group with radical ideology because it's the last hope. I mean, what is it? What type of person have you found a common denominator of what drives this particular ideology? And maybe if we got to the root of the psychology, then, perhaps then, I think like, for example, a lot of the younger European Arab men, the men that were born in Europe, born in, let's say, France, and they have an Arab, but their ethnic origin is Arabic of some kind. And then France, the French don't really accept them as French. They're kind of outcast and it's harder for them to get opportunities, harder for them to get jobs. They become desperate. They feel alienated. They feel outcast. So then it's the same exact ideology. Well, then down with this system, right? Well, then down with this that keeps me oppressed. I mean, these people are terrible to me and I'm never going to get ahead and it's horrible. So I'm going to go join ISIS. I mean, that's what we've seen. Is that then they say, well, then I'm going to go join, then the only thing that's going to help me here is God. And if I do this thing, then my life in the next life will be way better. That's how I'm going to get glory and riches finally. I mean, that's kind of the mentality that leads people to these things. So what is it that's leading these kids into this? Like, because, I know a lot of young people and in my family, I've got a lot of young people and let's say I know in my family alone, like 20 something year olds. One of them is Antifa that I could, she kind of identifies as like radical Antifa leftist. Just one out of the 20. The rest of them are not. The rest of them might have some, Marxist ideology, like you've brought up, like they're taught in schools and they think that there's a better economic system, or they think that, things would be better if we moved in a more democratic socialist direction, but they're not Antifa. They don't go that far. There's something else that drives a person to that. So what is it, do you think, that's causing that?
Yeah, so I would say that there's three main things that I see when it comes to being radicalized on the far left. The first is exactly what you were just talking about. They target people that are not like that. They don't socially fit in. Maybe they don't have a friend group. I tell people this story like every single time I have the opportunity. When I go undercover at far left events, and I've gone undercover for several days at a time to their conferences or trainings or things like that, everyone is incredibly nice to you. Like, it is a very welcoming environment to be in. They don't care what you look like. They don't care how if you're fat or not. They don't care how your hair looks. They don't care how you dress. They don't care what pronouns you use. You can literally do anything and show up at a far left event and they will be incredibly nice to you as long as they think that you are on their team or that they have the ability to recruit you to their team. And I think that they target a lot of autistic people, especially the queer Marxist side of things, where they're already feeling socially awkward anyway. And so it makes sense that they show up in these communities, they're welcomed, they're, given resources, they're given friendship and social circles. I think that makes a ton of sense. But there are two other factors that I see showing up an awful lot. The first is that there are an awful lot of second and third generation socialists in the United States right now, because actually one of the unique features of a lot of far left organizing meetings, and this is true of the DSA, this is also true of farther left environments, a lot of them actually have childcare at their meetings. And so they build childcare into their whole community process where you can bring your kids and drop them off at the little child care center, and they're going to play communist games with the kids. They've actually retaken some popular games like Monopoly, and they've made them into communist games that they play with them at these daycares to teach them how to be a good comrade and part of the commune. So a lot of these activists are literally just growing up in these environments. And then I cannot diminish the impact of the K through 12 schools. I mean, imagine you're someone who has gone to public school since you were 5 years old in a very leftist area like Seattle, for example, and you have literally had far left teachers your entire life. And do they teach Marxism straight out of the book? No, but they infuse it into every part of every curriculum you have. So you always get a little hint of it. And so by the time you graduate from high school, you literally don't know of anything different. This is the worldview that's been presented to you by your teachers. And then if you go off to college, and especially if you're in one of the more liberal arts areas of study, it gets even worse, and the professors are even worse about the things that they're putting out there and the things that you're reading and stuff like that. But they teach you that this is normal and this is the way the world is. And so you get someone that goes to like lives in Seattle and goes to a public school and then goes to college. That is 16 years of indoctrination during their more formative years, and they literally they've never been exposed to information outside of their worldview. And so to say, like, to them, you're in a cult. Do you know you're in a cult? Well, they truly have no idea. And so I think it's one of those things where, is it every single person in the younger generations? No, absolutely not. But there's enough that I'm deeply worried about the amount of people that we're going to see being radicalized. And yes, I mean, the DSA is not the same as the far left for sure. The DSA is not going to enact violence, but even getting people into the DSA is getting them away from the Democratic Party and moving them more far left. And I know for an absolute fact, there are caucuses within the DSA that are trying to pull the DSA further left than they are right now. I actually had a meeting with one of them when I was undercover at the New York Anarchist Book Fair. I had a whole conversation with them about this, about how the only reason they're in the DSA is literally to pull the DSA further left. And so I don't know. I think it's a bigger problem than more people think. And I think we're going to be dealing with it until people confront it head on.
Well, I mean, we could also say on the other side, people are far right on the right. You know, there's further right groups trying to pull the Republican Party further right. You know, I think that happens inside of all the groups. But again, I think that the core is, you know, when people are happy and when people feel like things are going well, they don't want radical change. You know, that's it. I think it's playing to it's showcasing a deeper problem of unhappiness in our youth, that they really don't think that there's a future for them, for whatever the reason be. You know, now they're blaming it on capitalism and colonizers and the patriarchy, and they're blaming it on all these things, and genders, you know, I mean, they're blaming it on whatever they can, but there's still a root to the issue. And it's that young people are not feeling hope for whatever reason. And so then they're scratching at whatever they can in order to find that hope. And I think that should be more, maybe that's like the alarming part, is I don't think we could just say, okay, stop having this ideology. You have to stop this ideology. Because the alternative to them doesn't work. You know, that's their point. Their point is, yeah, but you want me to just keep going along with this broken system? Well, the system's broken. It's not working. And I don't think they're wrong. You know, their way of fixing it, I don't think is right. But I don't think they're wrong either, in that the system is not working for them anymore, for that younger generation in particular.
I 100% agree with everything that you just said. And I think part of the problem, and why I'm trying to make sure people know about this and this, ideology in America, is that I really think that the right is missing a golden opportunity to actually present some sort of vision to these kids to say, here is how we're going to make your life better in a convincing way that actually does make an impact. And right now, when I look between, I'm very far right person personally, but I don't consider myself part of like either political tribe. I think they all suck, honestly. But when I look at the far left has a vision. They have tactics that they're implementing to try to achieve that vision. They have a social ecosystem. They have all these activities people can be involved with. It's fun. Like, you actually do. And I understand what you're saying about not being happy, and there's truth to that, but when you're in the far left environment, it is actually a fun environment to be in, and you do actually have a good time. The right doesn't do any of that. They don't have any education. They don't have any vision. They aren't doing anything to cultivate the young people on their own side. I mean, we've all seen like the rise of Nick Fuentes and the Groypers, and that's entirely because they've had their backs turned on them by the Republican Party and the GOP, who hate them and they possibly hate Nick and the Groypers more than they hate the far left. And so I think that this is just the result of the abdication of the conservative right to present any sort of compelling vision to society. And I really wish they would get their acts together and do better, honestly.
Yeah. Or even the mainstream left is not really also, I guess, doing the same thing, like presenting solutions. I mean, because that's what we're seeing in Congress. Like, for example, they all stand up and cheer for war, right? And they all protect Israel. I mean, and that's what young people are saying is like, oh, you guys are all just for war. Siphoning all of our resources for other countries and doing this. And I think a lot of people voted for Donald Trump and hoped for Donald Trump, thinking that they would get change. I think a lot of those same people voted for Barack Obama when he was running the first time around, thinking that there was going to be change. And what do we get? We get more of the same every single time. I mean, I'm shocked at how we're getting so much more of the same with Donald Trump. I really thought things would actually be different. I mean, naive, dumb me, to think that, but I really did. I thought, here's a political outsider. It's like a completely different situation. And yet we're still getting a lot of the more, weapons of mass destruction, and we need to go to war. Right. That's what we're hearing from Donald Trump. This time it's instead of Iraq, it's now Venezuela for oil, the same reasons. I mean, it's just, people are sick of it, and they're seeing the same, nothing's getting better for them. Instead, the political class just keeps doing the exact same thing, like we're on a freaking merry-go-round that never stops. I mean, it's like a nightmare funhouse that people seem to be living in. So, yeah, I think you're right. There needs to be solutions that are presented from the right, or even, and I would say even from the mainstream, from the both establishment sides need to stop being so establishmenty. We need to drain the swamp and actually come up with real solutions that help the American people. And then maybe we wouldn't have these problems.
I 100% agree with you. And you make a great point, too, about the Democratic Party. One of the reasons the far left is growing is, quite frankly, because the Democratic Party is completely feckless and just not a factor to them at all. Now, that's not to say I do think the Democrats are going to win the midterms, but I think the fact that the Democrats are going to win the midterms is honestly just a reflection of how bad the Republicans are and how unhinged they are from the needs and wants of the American people. And so if the right doesn't get their act together, I'm very black-pilled at this point. I'm just going to sit here and watch the world burn and talk about the left for the next several years, because I just think it's going to get worse and worse and worse. I don't want it to get worse. I hope the Trump administration steps up and actually does something about this. But given everything I've seen so far, I don't think the Trump administration takes the far left seriously. I don't think they take Antifa seriously. I don't think they're doing anything to stop them. And I think it's just going to the violence is going to get more pronounced.
The best way they could stop it is if they actually would have lived up to their campaign promises. I mean, of make America great again, America first, build America for Americans. Then people maybe would have started seeing hope and jobs, and instead we're being told, oh, you're not going to even need a job in 10 years because AI is going to replace you. It's like, that's the fastest way to march in what these Antifa groups are talking about, right? I mean, you want to go into Marxist ideology. Well, we're just going full steam ahead in that direction under the Trump administration as they usher in rapid AI, under a new Operation Warp Speed toward AI taking our jobs. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, really great points here. Thank you for being on and pointing out that this group, I know you're just like the most knowledgeable person when it comes to the left. That's not an exaggeration. I do think you are the most knowledgeable, being somebody that infiltrates the groups, gets in there, understands the ideology so well, really talks to them. A lot of people, they just hear things, they see things, and then they don't get to know these people. They don't really have any idea. But you're actually going in, doing the investigative work, the undercover work, talking to them, getting to know them, getting inside their mind. And yeah, instead it's being, this particular instance was, it was just pro-Palestine. We have to stop anti-Semitism. And yeah, pull your hair out, right? Frustrating, totally frustrating. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. We do have the link down below to follow you on X and also to your Substack so that people can see all of your great work, order your books, and also look at all of these various, all of the whole catalog, the archive of tweets that you got from these Turtle Island Liberation members. So thank you again. Is there anywhere else that you want people to go or anything you want them to know?
No, the very best place is to go to my Substack. That is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. And I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. on YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and X. So people can find me on there. And I will, be reviewing Antifa stuff all week long. So if people want to come and see the documents for themselves, I'm more than happy to walk them through it.
Thank you so much, Karlyn. Really great having you on.
Thank you.